So in July and just recently, I did yes, no, maybes for books that I read this year. I really wanted to go over each of those books in more depth, and some of those books you've actually seen me do book reviews for already. So let's just go ahead and dive right in, and I'm going to go over every single book that I've read this year. If you've been on this channel for a while, you already know that I'm a big audiobook reader. This year, I did not read a single book in ebook or paperback format. I do plan to change that a little bit for 2026, but let's just go ahead and assume that every single book that I read this year was in audiobook format. As I was compiling this list, it was really fun to go through my Libby app and look at all of the books I had borrowed this year. And also, I saw how many, or rather how few books that I bought from Amazon this year, which was kind of shocking. I've really taken a step towards using my library apps instead of buying books through Audible, and as somebody who isn't super fond of Audible's business practices, I felt very proud that I really had only bought a couple of books from them this year. So as you can guess, some of these books I read back in January 2025, so I might be a slightly unreliable narrator here because it's been a while since I've read any of them. So my first book of the year was 10,000 Stitches by Olivia Atwater. I found this book at Barnes & Noble originally, and I'm pretty sure I actually own a physical copy of it, so I do have a shelf trophy. I really enjoyed this book. The two main characters really resonated with me. The story was solid. I really enjoyed the way the female main character's magic worked, even though she didn't really understand how it worked to begin with. I did read Half a Soul before this, thinking that it was part of a series that needed to be read in order, and I didn't enjoy Half a Soul, so I actually went into this book very skeptical that I wasn't going to enjoy it. That said, I think that this one is the better of those two books, and I would definitely go back and read this one again so that I could understand the nuance more. Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. I loved this book. That said, Travis Baldree has this amazing way of writing a first chapter that I absolutely hate. I know that's really weird to say about a book that I enjoyed, but even in Legends and Lattes, I didn't enjoy the first chapter, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue and read the rest of the book because of it. And Bookshops and Bone Dust does the exact same thing for me, so I really feel like the next book in the series, I think it's Brigands and Bread Knives, is probably going to feel the exact same way for me. That said, I really did enjoy the story as a whole, and I look forward to more books from Travis in the future. The Final Gambit by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. It was the third book, I think it is, in the Inheritance Games series, and it kind of suffers from third book syndrome for me. I enjoyed the ending overall, kind of seeing it come to a close, but I probably could have just read book one and been okay with not reading the rest of the series. I think it was a great premise, but it was really more teen drama and puzzles than story driven for me. This Inevitable Ruin by Matt Dinniman. If you know me at all, you know that Matt Dinniman has very quickly become my favorite author of all time. This book was so dark that I almost quit. There is a point in which, especially in the audiobook version, Jeff Hayes does a scene that is literally so visceral that I had to pause it and take a couple of laps to calm down. Matt Dinniman calls himself a horror author, and this book really made me see why. Although there were some moments of levity, it really underscored how much this is a war to Carl and all of the other crawlers at this point. I'm really looking forward to book 8. I might be creeping on his Patreon a little bit, but I'm going to be holding out for the audiobook. So it sounds like we have a ways to go just based on that. Sunrise on the Reaping. I absolutely loved this book. I think that it is probably the best book that Suzanne Collins has ever written. Sunrise on the Reaping, which is Haymitch's games and his point of view. I absolutely loved this book. It is so lyrical. Also, it hits a lot of points about politics and propaganda that are actually very relevant to today's political climate. And I think it was a very timely book to come out. I don't think it would have hit as strongly if it came out further down the line. I think it's some of Suzanne Collins's strongest writing. It actually made me go back and read The Hunger Games again because I wanted to see the difference and the nuances of the first book in the series versus Haymitch's point of view for his games. Cackle by Rachel Harrison. I originally went into this book thinking that it was going to turn into a sapphic romance, and was pleasantly surprised to find out that it ended up being more of a sisterly sort of turn, where one person is trying to help the female main character grow and heal after a breakup. And I really loved that, and I wish we had more books like that. Killer Instinct by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I did not enjoy this book. I don't remember finishing it. It was very forgettable for me. I kind of brute forced my way through it. It didn't hit very hard for me. The first book in the series was okay, and the second book seemed to have exactly the same formula, and I don't enjoy just kind of reading the same book reimagined in a different way a second time, especially when it's the same characters and nothing really changing overall. So it was, I don't remember the ending. Heavenly Tyrant. I'm really surprised that Penguin Random House published this book. It was so politically heavy, and hits a lot of things that I think are happening kind of currently in the real world, that I'm absolutely shocked that Penguin Random House was like, yeah, let's go for it. I honestly thought that this book was going to end the series. I thought it was going to be a duet, but I guess there's going to be a third book. I'm going to read that third book, but I honestly felt like the story could have very easily ended at that second book. Overall, really love this series, love the author, love the kind of take on history and it just being completely reimagined. I'm actually I'm going to mess up this name pronunciation. One of Geron's other books is on my TBR, so I'm looking forward to reading other books by her going forward. The Grandest Game. I really enjoyed this one. It is set in the future after the Inheritance games itself. And I liked it being different characters. I really liked a couple of the different characters. One of the point of views I could have probably just done without entirely. And that said, I will not be reading the second book in the series. I don't feel that I was led to care enough in order to read the rest. North is the Night. I have another book review on this on my channel already, so I'm going to keep it relatively short, but I adored this book. I went into it kind of blind. I know nothing about Finnish folklore. I love how much it taught me about Finnish folklore. I don't think I could repeat a single word of it, but it made me feel like so connected with this world that I'm not familiar with, and I will absolutely be reading the second book. The Village Library Demon Hunting Society is kind of a satire of cozy mystery books. The character at the very beginning of the book very quickly realizes that they are having a very large amount of murders in their small town, and they decide that they need to figure out why this is happening. And it ends up being this kind of weird, paranormal, mystery, non-mystery. I personally didn't enjoy it. I thought I really was, because cozy mystery and supernatural stuff is like right up my alley, but I didn't connect with the character. It felt very jarring at times. It felt like a lot of things just seemed to happen to the character and that the character wasn't acting of their own volition on anything. So it felt very contrived. I have read this author's books 2 times now and have been disappointed twice, so I am not likely to read books by this author anymore. I'm going to group these 2 books together because they're part of a duet. We Hunt the Flame and We Free the Stars. I feel really bad giving these 2 books a poor review. I was super intrigued by the book blurb and even own a physical copy of the book downstairs in my trophy shelf library, as it were. But the magic in the story was very forgettable. The main characters didn't really seem to have any chemistry. The beats of the story never feel like they actually hit and had any resolution. It just felt like some sort of like free-flowing tale that never had any resolutions to anything that was happening. And the prose, while absolutely beautiful, never felt like it had anything happen. The characters got into fights and it never felt like anything changed. There was no tension and no difference between one scene and another, and it never felt like the needle moved in any direction of somebody trying to get to a goal. And it felt like when people started to get together to try to move towards basically like saving the country or world, or I don't even know what to call it, there was no, I don't want to do this. There was no like fighting the call. It was just like, yeah, let's do it. So it was very plot driven and not character driven, and that kind of bothered me because I really thought it was going to be a more character driven book. Before the Coffee Gets Cold, this book had been on my to read list for quite a while. I'm pretty sure over a year. And I think that in the translation of this book from, I think, Japanese into English, it's missing something. Not that I couldn't understand the story itself, but I really feel like there might be some more like of a lyricalness about the writing that is lost in that translation. I overall really enjoyed the story, but I feel like I need to read it a second time to really understand it. The Dallergit Dream Department Store. I absolutely adored this book. It is so different. It's kind of got its own fairy tale. I think that the translator did a really good job in deciding to use present tense when in the dream world and past tense when not in the dream world. And I think that it's just a very cool idea, well thought out, and it really inspired me and made me interested in how this realm and world works, and made me want more immediately. The Scholar and the Last Fairy Door. This book, I couldn't read this book fast enough. I wish that I could have just immediately binged the whole thing, but I totally didn't get the chance to do that. I adored this book, and I know I've said that a lot. Sorry. It's a thing for me. I admit I figured out the kind of plot twist of this book very early on, but I loved it actually taking so long for it to be revealed to people. And I absolutely, I have a physical copy of it on my shelf. I will be reading it again in the future, and I highly recommend it. The Ones We Burn. We have arrived at my first DNF of the year. I'm going to eventually give this book another shot, but I'm going to have to physically read it. Because the audiobook narrator made a choice about the voice of this character that really annoyed me. This character is basically supposed to be a hardened killer who uses like blood magic that's super rare and dangerous, and the main character's voice is portrayed as super light and innocent and childish, and it drove me bonkers. I could not actually focus on anything that was happening in the book because of that voice portrayal. I do have a physical copy of this book, and I'll be reading it over the course of the year physically right before bed. It might take me a while to read, though, because when you're only reading 30 minutes every day, a book that's like 500 pages, it's gonna take a while. Dreadful. Dreadful is a book about a Dark Lord who has forgotten who they are and keeps getting surprised by how they used to act versus how they feel now. I found it interesting and refreshing, but ultimately kind of forgettable. I wish they had done a couple things different that would have just made it more interesting versus kind of falling flat throughout. And I probably wouldn't reread it. I ultimately kind of call it forgettable and meh. I think there were ways that they could have done better, but I did kind of overall like enjoy the basics of the story, but I probably wouldn't recommend this if somebody said, hey, what do you think about this book? Kill the Farm Boy. I honestly thought I was going to love this book. I love a subverted trope, as you can see from quite a few books on this list. But ultimately, the slapstick humor and the unseriousness of the story really fell flat for me. I was initially hooked, and after that, it completely lost me. It never felt like there was a point to anything. And it just ultimately didn't feel like a story. It felt like one big joke instead of a book. Accomplice to the Villain. I really loved Assistant to the Villain. The second book in the series, I think it's Apprentice to the Villain, started losing me. It never felt like anything was coming together, and Accomplice to the Villain took me even further from that feeling of like, okay, we're coming to a resolution, and it feels like it lost the charm of the first book, and ultimately, like, I don't feel like we're moving forward anymore. I feel like we're standing still, and I won't be reading the fourth book in the series. I didn't even finish Accomplice to the Villain, and I don't want to give it a shot to go back because book 2 started losing me, book 3 lost me entirely. How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying. This book is so dark. If you are not in a good mental state, I would not recommend reading this book. It is dark. It has lots of mentions of things that are going to be very triggering. Check your trigger warnings before attempting to read this book. Other than that, I really enjoyed it. The main character's humor was dark and just kind of funny and deadpan at times, and I really enjoyed it. I think it was a little bit overly sexualized at times, but, you know, it's kind of the way this character is. I would be interested to see if other books by this author read the same way. If they are, I would probably not read them, but this one, I think it's understandable why it is that way. Stranger Skies. I don't remember this book at all. I know I didn't finish it. I remember reading the first book in the series, Curious Tides, and it coming to the end and thinking, yes, we're going to be getting like Friendship Conquers All book 2 instead of this love triangle thing. I didn't connect with this book. I don't even remember how far I got into it. It just did not catch me at any point, and I was really looking forward to it, so it was kind of a disappointment. The 13th Child is another trophy shelf book, and it has those shiny gold edged pages. I loved this book. There were a lot of twists and turns. I love that it was like a fairy tale retelling, and it was one I didn't know. There's lots of fairy tale retellings of books that you're kind of familiar with, and I love me a good obscure tale. Everybody wants to rule the world except me. This is the sequel to How to Become a Dark Lord and Die Trying. I absolutely had to finish the series. Didn't super understand the ending. Like, it was supposed to be this big twist, and I just was kind of confused by it. I feel like it might have been a little bit contrived or like not planned, and so kind of just like it surprised the author as much as it surprised me, and I feel like it may have needed a little bit more workshopping. The Sea Witch. I needed a kind of like a palate cleanser, turn brain off book after all of the very like heavy books I had been reading, especially because I had been reading a bunch of them that I had just DNF'd, and like I just needed a book that was going to be different. I enjoyed it. I think the romance was good. I don't have a whole lot of interesting things to say about this book in general. It was just kind of a palate cleanser book for me. Blood over Brighthaven. Oh my gosh, I love the magic system of this book. I loved the twist. I loved the ending. This book is phenomenal, and if they don't make a movie out of it, I will be so upset. Typhoon. This book has been on my TBR forever since I think 2020, November of 2020, when I was making a reading list to help inspire me to write what was at the time going to be a historical fantasy-ish book about ships, and has mentally become something completely different at this point. And long story short, I don't usually call myself a mood reader, but this was one of those cases where I was not ready to read this book, so I ended up setting it aside for now. I feel like I'm going to give it a better shot another time, but it was not time to read it this time. The Dallergett Dream Making District. This is the sequel to the Dallergett Dream Department Store, and I was actually a little disappointed by this. The first book really interested me and inspired me, and I loved where it was going, and I really thought we were going to get more from this one, and it felt very same, and it kind of fell a little short of where I thought we were going. So I am a little sad because the first one was absolutely amazing, and the second book just, I never connected with it. So I am kind of sad. I might read another book in this series if they come out with one, just to see if it improves at all, but this one just wasn't it for me. The Book That Wouldn't Burn. This book did not deliver on its promises to me. There's something that we talk about as authors from a writing perspective called the promise of the premise. And the promise of the premise is that when you are reading the blurb, this is telling you what you're going to get when you read this book. And I gave this book about 5 hours of my time before I eventually quit, and it never actually gave me what I was looking for from what the blurb had said. I never connected with the characters, and the story that I thought I was going to get never started. The Full Moon Coffee Shop. I remember seeing this book on a Barnes & Noble shelf and grabbing it and deciding, yeah, this one's for me, I'm buying it. It then took me over a year before I read it. So by the time I got back to reading this book, I had actually forgotten what it was about. Ultimately, I really enjoyed it. I wish I had paid better attention to certain parts because I feel like it would have meshed and connected better. So it's definitely something I'd like to reread, especially because it's such a small, quick read. Plain Nice. The main character was really hard to connect with because she is so very different from me, as someone who's a very kind of self-centered, manipulative, social media influencer who is blunt and takes what she wants and things like that. And I really more connected with the mom's point of view in like her book that she leaves behind for her daughter. And I really would have preferred to see this book from mom's perspective or some other perspective. I think that there were more interesting narrators to be used. Or at the very least, maybe a rotating perspective versus always being in this one character's head. I think the ending was kind of predictable, and there was really only one thing to happen. I admit I kind of rushed through reading the end because I had 2 hours to read something like 4 hours of book. Because I had just not had a chance to listen to it in the few days that I had borrowed it. But ultimately, it was an okay read. I would not read it again. The Last Devil to Die. I decided to borrow this one from the library because it kept showing up on my Amazon recommendations. And had I realized that it was the fourth book in a series, I would not have borrowed it. Because it was a fourth in series, I feel like I was missing a lot of like background and history on the characters, and so I just never connected with it. If not for my baby. Okay, so I borrowed this one from the library, and I borrowed it because I kept seeing stuff about it because of all of the drama on it kind of being an RPF. Sorry, real person fiction for people who don't know what that is. The author had originally written it to be kind of about Hosier, and ended up kind of renaming the character, and so it's kind of a little bit of a Mary Sue who falls for this Irish rock star, and the story about them falling in love. I think the book itself was pretty good. It felt a little bit contrived at times because somebody with absolutely no history of working in show business is probably not going to be offered a backup singer role. Let me start by saying I'm not part of this industry, so I really have no clue how this works. But I think that they would be given like some sort of music or some sort of track that they need to listen to that's just the background song that they need to know, and not completely just like, hey, listen to this album, you'll figure it out. It just felt really weird and gave me a little bit of ick at times, especially because I know that this main character is Hosier, not Hosier. And I'm really surprised that this is not being, like, litigated a little bit. But also I understand why not, because as somebody who is very famous, you don't punch down. It's one of those moments where Hosier, if he decided to do anything, is like kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, so he's been very silent on the matter, but it does feel very weird, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to borrow the book and not buy it, because I was really curious about the mystery behind all of it, but also, like, I didn't want to support this sort of behavior from the author. I Ran Away to Evil Book 1. I'm not going to lie, I read this book over the course of several months, a little bit at a time. I feel like the lit RPG aspect of this book actually really bogged down the story. I think that if they had just decided, I'm going to write a cozy fantasy about this girl that goes to the Dark Lord and thinks she's going to die and ends up falling in love with him instead, I think it would have been a tighter, better story. I don't know what ultimately led to this author deciding that it needed to be a lit RPG, but I feel like they were kind of just ticking boxes by making it a lit RPG, and I think it might have been better served by just focusing on the cozy fantasy. The Spell Shop was absolutely amazing. Cannot wait to read the second book in the series. And honestly, as long as book 2 delivers, I would absolutely read a third book. I have not gotten it pinged to me yet, but it's on my, it's in my queue for my library app, so hopefully it comes to me soon. But, the Spell Shop is so cute. I love the main character. I love that she's trying to hide this magic by calling it, like, remedies instead, and she's kind of committing a crime by doing it, and it's all very hush-hush secretive, but by the end, it's completely out there and definitely not a secret. The Baby Dragon Cafe. I did not get far into this book The intro really just kept pulling me out of the book. I never connected with it, and I am pretty sure I quit before the 30-minute mark. The Coward. This book has been on my shelf for a while, and I'm really sad that I slept on this book for so long. And I'm actually even more upset that I almost quit this book early on, because I don't think I was giving it a fair shot in the first 10 to 20 minutes of the book, and I actually went back and re-listened to that section because there's a lot of emotional information from this character and kind of background on what he's been doing recently before it dives into what happened in his past and where he's going forward from here. And I instantly, as soon as I connected with this book, I hit borrow on the sequel, The Warrior, and it got to me shortly after I had put it on my to-be-read list. Chain of Gold. I keep seeing this book in places, so I thought, okay, I'm just gonna borrow it. And I got it, and I started listening to it and never really connected with it, so I kind of gave up on it pretty early into the book. Alchemized. I'm actually really surprised I enjoyed this. When Manacled was still on AO3, I DNF'd it. That said, I think that the traditionally published version that's been de-Harry Pottered and kind of cleaned up and made better actually improved this book. I preferred it not being as explicit as the fanfiction version was. And I'm not usually somebody who reads a lot of high spice books. Quite often for me, I think those books have spice in them to tick a box and not to move a plot forward. I was pleasantly surprised that this one was so much easier for me to read, and I really like the things that they did in order to change this book and make it different from the fanfiction version. While I'm thinking about it, if you're interested in kind of having a video or chatting about all of these books that are going from being fanfiction into turning into traditionally published books, I would love to talk about that. Just let me know down in the comments, and we can do a video or maybe even a video series talking about the different books that have had this happen to them. And I'm really interested how they're not being sued for basically turning what was a derivative piece of work into an original piece of work. The Warrior. It came to me right after Alchemized. I was glad I was able to finish Alchemized as quickly as I did because it's 36 hours and The Warrior is a much shorter book, and I was worried I wasn't going to be able to get to it in time to listen to it. This book follows the same familiar characters from The Coward, but it is so very different, and I super enjoyed it and would absolutely read more books by Stephen Aryan in the future. A few of his other books look really interesting, but they're not available from either of my libraries, so I might have to get them on Audible. Gallant. This is my first book by V.E. Schwab, and I kept seeing her books and I really wanted to try one. This one sounded really interesting, so I decided to go for it. And I wasn't disappointed, but it was way different than I kind of thought it was going to be. I love that it was kind of equal parts a tragedy and a little bit of a happy ending in a way, and I really loved the main character and the very psychological aspect of this story. So I'm willing to try other V.E. Schwab books in the future. Curse of Shadow and Thorns. I started this book, I had seen it on probably Amazon or something and ended up adding the audiobook to my Libby app It got sent to me and I started listening to it. I never connected with the character. It felt like the character just so happened to be this one way because it was going to be convenient for the plot and not because there was any real reason for it. I never really got far with this one. It might be a book for other people, but it wasn't a book for me. Spellbound. This book is so mature and well thought out, and my only criticism for this book is that at times the characters felt like they were using 1920s slang and lingo in order to set a scene instead of because they would naturally do so. The magic in this story is so cool. I feel like it was really well thought out, and I loved the two characters. I feel like their relationship felt very natural. It was spicy, but it was one of the few spice scenes that I actually really enjoyed. I think it deepened their relationship and moved the plot forward in a very natural way. So those are all of the books that I read in 2025, and these are the books I'm currently reading. On my Audible, I have A Deadly Education. This book has been on my TBR for a while because it's a progression fantasy, and I really would like to start writing more progression fantasy, so it's something that I'm interested in learning more about. I'm also reading Brewed with Love. I chose this one specifically because a lot of the ideas in it are similar to what I want to write in the near future. And I really wanted to see how this author executes this idea. Although, so far from what I've read, it's going to be very different from what I've been working on personally. And the last one is My Demon Hunter. It's currently borrowed on my Libby app. I haven't started reading it yet. I don't even remember what it's about, but I had it recommended to me, so I put it on my borrows list. I decided to write myself a couple bookish New Year's resolutions, and I think this is a good place to put it. So let's just go for it, shall we? I'd like to keep track of my reading in 2026. What I mean by that is, historically speaking, I usually look up what I read in the last 6 months or more before making one of these videos. So what I'd really like to do is actually track my reading and maybe log it in something like Storygraph or Fable before I actually get to the point of making videos about my reading in 2026. I have a goal of reading 2 nonfiction books. I'm probably going to end up reading 3 because I have one that I started last year that I haven't finished yet. It's very slow going because it's, for lack of a better term, self-help. It's something that my therapist recommended to me, which is helping me learn a lot about myself and my reaction to people's actions because of my upbringing with my mother, who is a narcissist with probable borderline personality disorder. And it's about borderline mothers and their children. But there are 2 other books that I've had on my list to read for a while, and I really want to read those in 2026. My other goal is to read 2 physical books this year. I read all audiobooks last year, and I am determined to read physical books. I own physical books that are not in audiobook format, and I need to read them. I'm going to read at least 2 physical books this year. It is a major goal for me to actually read my to-be-read list. I have multiple shelves downstairs that are full of books I have not read yet. And I need to get them off of my TBR. So that's my goal. I'm going to read the books that are on my TBR this year. So I'm really looking forward to my reading journey over the next year, and I'm excited to use all of this inspiration and energy from reading to bring it into my writing and show people what I've learned from writers who are better than me and hopefully become a better writer than I have been in time. Because you can't become a better writer without consuming good literature. Also, it's sometimes really nice to read bad books too, so that you can learn what not to do. So you don't become an author without knowing books just in general. So I really am hoping that, like, by reading a whole lot and consuming great books, that I can improve myself and really show you guys how I've improved going forward. Because so far, I really feel like almost every book that I've put out after my last one has gotten better and better. And I know that I can be better, and I just need to put in that work. So anyway, I'm really excited to read some more and write some more, and thanks for being here. If you want to come on this journey with me, hit the subscribe button. There's going to be more videos like this, and coming up soon, we're going to be doing our goals for 2026. I'm really excited for them and just really enthusiastic about what this next year has in store. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time.